then the story of Zacchaeus, this wonderful story of Zacchaeus, the tax collector who climbs the sycamore tree to see Jesus as he passes by. And also, just to remind us, when Corey and I read this lesson from Thessalonians, that, of course, is the modern-day city of Thessaloniki, where Corey's grandmother was alive until just a few months ago, really, just last. It's been about a year now, hasn't it? This is one of the earliest places where the Christian movement took shape. So Paul is writing to the city of Thessaloniki, the Christians there. Isaiah lays out some pretty familiar themes, which is the disconnection between religion and everyday life. And the message of the prophetic tradition is so consistent that religion, when it is disconnected from everyday life, is a great human temptation, because it makes us think we've done something. And so this litany of, I hate your fasts, I hate your Sabbaths, I hate your songs, I hate everything about your worship, because it doesn't lead you to change your lives. And I feel like I have hit that theme pretty hard. And as I was on my morning walk, and as I was, it was very, very dark, it seemed moonless, and the stars were out, and I was thinking, I've said so much about how religion becomes corrupted by its disconnection from everyday life. But I also would love to just remind us all that religion at its best gathers us as a community, and in a world that is really prone to holding up things of no value as being really important, we get to gather and remind ourselves together of what is most beautiful and deepest and most true about our experience, and gather those memories up and those yearnings in our heart. Religion gives us the opportunity to do that. It reminds us what is of true value in the world, and it reorients us. And it is, if we're doing it correctly, it's a celebration of the truth and beauty of our human experience as our lives are touched and called by the presence of God in each other, in our own hearts, and in God's creation. So, the theme of religion's corruption is one known and dear to me, but remember, religion also has this, let's not forget the true beauty of religion. So Zacchaeus, the story is told in a way that almost makes us feel like Zacchaeus could have been a pretty likable character. But when we get to the city of Jericho, Zacchaeus was not a likable character. He was despised. He was the chief tax collector, which means he was a collaborator with the Roman occupying armies. And people hated him, and he was wealthy and probably an extortionist. And so for Jesus to say, Zacchaeus, come down from the tree, I'm going to stay with you tonight, was Jesus doing what Jesus did. He was ignoring the boundary lines that we draw in every social situation about who's acceptable and who's not. And he was doing exactly what the last line of the gospel says. The Son of Man came to seek out and to save those who are lost. And to back up a little bit, Zacchaeus was in the sycamore tree because he heard about Jesus, and he was interested in Jesus. And you think of this man who is, I was going to say crusted, which reminds me of it. There's the French novelist André Gide. We usually think of the terms quick and the dead. He spoke of the quick and the crusted. The quick and the crusted. And Zacchaeus, think of him as a man crusted by his social position, by the kind. Think of the way he would encounter people as he met them during the day, and sort of the emotional tenor of those encounters. And yet something stirred within him that caused him to do a really undignified thing, climb a tree so that he could see this notorious figure of Jesus as he passes through Jericho. And that's something that speaks to our hearts. Reminded me of a story, and I sometimes don't think I tell very many stories, but reminded me of, it's probably 45 years ago. And I was a college student at the University of Washington. Go Dogs. just to throw in a bit of secularity. A student at the University of Washington. My parents lived about 35 miles south of Seattle, and they were out of town for a couple of weeks, and I went by their house to check on the house. And while I was there, it was a nice sunny afternoon. While I was there, a group of children came, and it's not curbs and streets. It's a hillside house, sort of rural fields and woods and stuff. Marauding packs of children. this group of children. I can't really remember how old they were. 5 to 7, maybe. Probably 3 boys and 3 girls. And what I learned was, I learned something about my mother. My mother was that older woman in the neighborhood who was cranky. And if any children came, she would come and chase them away. And so it was kind of the game that I think they had come to play, expecting an adversarial encounter. And so I was friendly and was one to talk to them. And it was the girls that kind of warmed up first. And they sort of formed a little inner circle. And the boys were sort of all around the perimeter. And they were belligerent. They were throwing things, and they were trying to, come on, let's get the war going. And I just didn't respond to that at all. And the girls and I started playing. We were young enough so that you could grab them by the arms and swing, like that. And it was fun, They were having fun, and it was kind of, I was a college kid, who knows how these moments unfold. And as I played with the girls, I watched the boys' faces change. And they dropped that mask of belligerence, and they became little boys again. Mm-hmm. They became little boys, and then they wanted to play too. And they joined the party. And I think maybe the most powerful memory of that is of watching the change in the boys' faces. And it kind of worked both ways. I watched it happen as they were called out of this sort of mask they had adopted and became real little persons again. But I also knew that process of beginning to wear a mask and being identified more and more and more with the mask is a process that it may provide some little seed as a contrary to that development of a mask, but they were on their way, and they were just at that age where you could start to see, the way little kids don't really encounter the world, with that mask on. That's the only word I can really have for it. And I could see the beginning of that mask hardening. And it was revealed in the softening of it. And why am I telling this? Well, I think something like that happened to Zacchaeus. I think something like that happened to Zacchaeus, where he was called out of his place. He knew where he was in that society. He knew where he was. His position was established, and it was lucrative if it made him despised. He had some downside as well. But he got called out of that. He got called out of that. Something was interesting about Jesus, and then Jesus just welcomed him to the party. And welcomed someone who was a despised man in that community. The community could all just get together and agree what a terrible person Zacchaeus was. And everything changed for everybody on that day. Zacchaeus said, wow, however it is, I've been positioning myself among this community. I'm not going to do it that way anymore. I'm going to actually join in and be a member of this real community. And so Jesus was doing, he was saving the ones who are lost. And again, I'll just go back. It's the same thing that Nelson Mandela was doing. It's the same thing that always occurs when compassion reaches out to those who are frightened or are lost in whatever bad dream catches hold of us. There are lots of bad dreams out there, and they catch hold of us. And something needs to awaken us from those bad dreams. And again, the Christian story is almost entirely in that last line. The Son of Man came to seek and to save what is lost. And again, the Christian story is so often distorted by being described as a battle with evil, where you have to kill, you have to destroy or eliminate. Even C.S. Lewis was just, full of that kind of triumphal pathway of Christianity. And the way of Jesus is a lot different. You don't destroy Zacchaeus. You don't destroy Zacchaeus. You invite him to the party. You invite him and you make the invitation as clear as you can, and then you see who says yes. And what else are we doing in the church? I mean, we're trying to say there are actually better ways to live. And of course, my friend has this tagline in his email I've used before, and it's kind of the theme of this sermon. If you want to change the world, throw a better party. A real party that includes people and that has real joy at the center and truth, where each person who gets invited can be recognized as a full and complete member. We get solid in our masks, and we forget who we actually can be to ourselves and with each other. Blessed are those moments that call us out and help us remember who we truly are and where we truly are. And as the Hebrews always used to say, this is meant to be a great party, the great feast of creation. And we're all invited. Amen.
Amen.
Amen.